There's a cemetery in our tiny little village, and it's an old one. It dates back to the original settlers. It's quiet and it's peaceful. Still, there's something unsettling about the place. Perhaps because so many young children are buried there. Mr. Martin Lafergie set aside 1 acre of his land to be used by the community as a free burying ground. The first deed recorded dates back to August 28, 1823. However, the area appears to have been used as early as 1810 by a Mr. James W. Eisman. Some of the first families to be buried in the Little White Cemetery include Dobbs, Odell, Storms, King, and the Wilseys. You will also find veterans of the Civil War, including Sylvester Losey. The last stone belongs to Elizabeth Archer and is dated August 9, 1890. Mrs. S. A. Breeze's stone is dated November 14, 1894, but she was relocated to another cemetery. One vault barely exists today. It belonged to Mr. J. Lafergie and is dated 1862 on the stone entrance. Mr. Lafergie was kidnapped from his peaceful resting place one night by a bunch of mischievous boys who are said to have paraded him through town. Mr. Lafergie has since been relocated. His original vault was briefly used as a gathering place until it became dangerously unstable and began to cave in. It's currently overgrown and unenterable. Unfortunately, most of the cemetery has been deteriorating for quite some time, and it has created some restlessness among its tenants. Johnny lives just up the road from the cemetery. He saw a ghost one night. He was walking home one evening, heading up Ashford Avenue. As he began to approach the cemetery, a woman in what appeared to be her nightgown was walking towards him. Something about her demeanor disturbed him. Perhaps it was that she appeared to be in a white nightgown. There was something odd about her. He had no desire for an encounter so late in the evening. He stepped into the street and continued to walk in the road to avoid her. She headed out into the road as if to head him off. She headed straight for him. As he approached her, he put his hand out to avoid a collision. His hand went right through her, and then she was gone. And then there was that rainy night in the early fall. 3 friends sat around trying to think of something to do. Kevin mentioned a story he had heard. He recalled being told that people had taken a tape recorder into a cemetery and that they were able to record voices of the dead. The voices were angry, almost annoyed at the disturbance created. Phrases like "get out" and "go away" were heard when playing back the tapes. The 3 of them decided to get a tape recorder and they headed out to the cemetery. They sat on the wall and went over their plan. They would all 3 go in together and place the recorder down, then come out and sit on the wall. After 30 minutes, they would go in together and retrieve the tape. Once agreed, they placed the recorder down in the cemetery and returned to the outside wall. As they sat there, they made sure they could identify all the sounds they could hear in case they interfered with the recording. It had rained earlier. You could hear the wet tires on the pavement. The phone rang. A dog barked. They made note of all these things. Time was up. They went into the cemetery and retrieved the recorder. For the majority of the tape there was nothing. You could hear the sound of wet tires traveling on the road, but little else. Then, there it was, at the end of the tape. It sounded like a child's voice. They looked at each other in disbelief and rewound the tape. This time there was no denying what they heard. "Mama, Mama, it's me, Ida May." They looked at each other with only the slightest hesitation, and they tossed that tape in the nearest garbage pail, never to speak of it again, until now. The cemetery had been abandoned and neglected for some time, and those poor little souls were not exactly resting in peace. If you read the register of the free burying ground, you'll find so many children buried. One section lists 15 adults between the age of 19 and 20, and as many as 29 children. Another section lists 3 adults and 17 children. There were so many illnesses, epidemics, and infant deaths, both explained and unexplainable. Scarlet fever, smallpox, diphtheria, pneumonia, it devastated the tiny village. So many deaths, so young, and so many buried right there in the cemetery. A few perhaps a little more restless than others, and still known on occasion to come out and play. Just ask Sharon. She lives nearby the little white cemetery, and here's her story. She was lying in bed one night, feeling restless and unable to sleep. She normally loves her sleep. Having several children, she could appreciate her soft pillow, cozy blanket, and peace at the end of the day. This one night, however, she was feeling unusually restless and a bit edgy. Sleep eluded her. She lay there with her eyes closed, hoping slumber would find her. It didn't, but someone, or should I say something. Her foot began to prickle. It felt as if someone had run their finger up her foot, tickling her toes. Her heart skipped a beat. Pulling the covers over her head in fear, she lay there frozen. Needless to say, she got little sleep that evening. Sharon was quite affected by that night. Even in the heat of the summer, the covers were pulled over in a vain attempt to protect her from the mischievous antics of just what she didn't know. She found herself often looking out her window before bed, wondering what restlessness might be occurring at the cemetery. So many nights that followed, she found herself snuggled up on the couch, distancing herself from the tingling experience. One night she was lying on the couch, once again unable to sleep. She lay there in the dark, when suddenly the freezer door swung open. She sat there, right on the couch, watching the door slowly open, and then slam shut. Bam! It slammed so hard, so loud, that there was no way that it could have been just left ajar and teetered close on its own. It shook the whole fridge. It shook Sharon. Startled and afraid to call out, she lay there trying to gather her senses. Everyone else in the house was asleep. She was right there on the couch and knew no one was up and about. That was when she felt it. She was not alone. That was when she heard it. "Mommy," a little voice cried out in the very air beside her. It sounded like a child, but the voice was everywhere, as if lingering in the very air around her. Sharon has 2 little ones. They sleep well, and besides, she knows their voices. It was definitely not them. But who could it be then? She decided to check their rooms, just to be sure. They were sound asleep. Whoever, or whatever that poor little soul is, she still comes wandering into Sharon's home from time to time. Sharon recalls that Christmas Eve when the cookie disappeared. They were all sitting around the table enjoying some cookies and milk. Sharon put her cookie on the counter before stepping out of the room. When she returned, she said, "Hey, who took my cookie?" She responded to the innocent faces looking up at her. "Oh, I suppose it was the ghost of the little girl." Suddenly, as if in response, the light flickered. The microwave behind them beeped and reset to 0. 3 times she repeated it. Oh, was it the little girl? And all 3 times the microwave responded, beeping and resetting itself to 0. Sharon likes to take pictures, and so do her girls, so she puts her phone up high in the kitchen cabinet at night, out of their reach. One morning she awoke to find that someone had taken a picture with her phone, and it definitely wasn't her. Someone wanted to be seen. Someone wants to be known. That much is clear. But who? Among the rattling doorknobs and whispers of wind passing by, Sharon often hears the clear and distinct voice of a little girl calling out, "Mama,